Hello my lovelies, my name is Chantel and I'm the host over at Lady Justice True Crime. Lady Justice is a weekly podcast that covers fascinating cases both past and present from around the UK and Ireland. Some of them are strange, many are unbelievable, all of them are completely unique and are someone's story. So please come join me on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Liz Taylor is famous. In a sense, so am I. But at very much different quantity. No magazine's going to run up to cover me if I go to a premiere. But it's still a fame. It's a small fame. But you absorb it, you take it. And you like it. You like the adulation, the applause, the people cheering you on, the winning, the adulation, the applause. You absorb it, you take it. And you like it. You absorb it, you take it. And you like it. It's like a physical high. It's an addictive high, like all highs in the long run turn out to be. But it's a high that won't hurt you. If everybody went to balls and did less drugs, it'd be a fun world, wouldn't it? And the children now, most of them, 75% of them, of the children you see at the ball, wouldn't know what a ball was if it knocked them in the head.
I come from the old school of big costumes, feathers and beads, and they don't have that anymore. Now it's all about designers. And it's not about what you create, it's about what you can acquire.
Daytime, if they go out, they're only going out to try to hustle up a quarter or two to get their things for the ball or go to a little job. A lot of them have little jobs now. They work. Don't think they're lazy. In New York City, you work or you starve. You work or some kind of work, legal or otherwise, but you have to work to sustain yourself.
Have on a label, it means that you've got wealth when it doesn't really, because any shoplifter can get a label. In a ballroom, you can be anything you want. You're not really an executive, but you're looking like an executive. And therefore, you're showing the straight world that I can be an executive. If I had the opportunity, I could be one. Your peers, your friends are telling you, oh, you'd make a wonderful executive. Now, the fact that you are not an executive is merely because of the social standing of life. That is just pure thing. Black people have a hard time getting anywhere. And those that do are usually straight.
I've been to several balls, and they've actually had categories. Dynasty. You know, want you to look like Alexis or Crystal. When I grew up, you want to look like Marlene Dietrich, Betty Grable. Fortunately, I didn't know that I really wanted to look like Lena Horne. Nobody wanted to look like Lena Horne. Everybody wanted to look like Marilyn Monroe. Marlene Dietrich, Betty Grable, Lena Horne.
When they're undetectable, when they can walk out of that ballroom into the sunlight and onto the subway and get home and still have all their clothes and no blood running off their bodies, those are the femme realness queens. And usually it's a category for young queens. I'll tell you what a house is. A house is a gay street gang. Now, where street gangs get their rewards from street fights, a gay house street fights at a ball. And you street fight at a ball by walking in the category.
They call them competitions, but believe me, they're wars. And they often do lead to fights. The emotions be very high. They're very intense affairs. But I guess that's what makes them fun. Like a good movie, if there's no emotion, you don't enjoy it.
Ooh, that's shady! They throwing shade at him. I can't believe it.
Wait a minute now. Let's not get loud. Now, David!
That's the one thing that I find faulty with the balls. After they've laid down these little categories, then they try to become a stickler for exact interpretation. for those little flaws like that, that's because that's a part of shade. That's the idea. Knock them out if you can. Get them anyway. You hit them below the belt. Shade comes from reading. Reading came first. Reading is the real art form of insult. You get in a smart crack and everyone laughs and kikis because you found a flaw and exaggerated it, then you've got a good read going. They may call you a faggot or a drag queen. You find something to call them. But then when you are all of the same thing, then you have to go to the fine point. In other words, if I'm a black queen and you're a black queen, we can't call each other black queens because we're both black queens. That's not a read. That's just a fact. So then we talk about your ridiculous shape, your saggy face, your tacky clothes. Then reading became a developed form where it became shade. Shade is, I don't tell you you're ugly, but I don't have to tell you because you know you're ugly. And that's shade.
I always had hopes of being a big star. Then I look, as you get older, you aim a little lower. And I just say, well, yeah, you still might make an impression. Everybody wants to leave something behind them, some impression, some mark up on the world. And then you think you left a mark on the world if you just get through it. And a few people remember your name, then you left a mark. You don't have to bend the whole world. I think it's better to just enjoy it. Pay your dues and enjoy it. If you shoot an arrow and it goes real high, hooray for you.
Today's episode is sponsored by True Crime by Indie Drop-In. True Crime by Indie Drop-In is a podcast that features episodes from independent true crime creators. Each week, you'll explore a different aspect of the true crime genre. You'll hear episodes about serial killers, violence, conspiracies, celebrities, white collar, and much more. You will hear creators from all over the world, including an episode from yours truly. Search for True Crime Indie Drop-In in your favorite app or click the link in the show notes. Welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige, and in today's episode, I'll be telling the story of Dorian Corey and the possibilities of why there was a body in her closet for almost 20 years. Dorian Corey was born the year of 1937 in Buffalo, New York, on a farm. Dorian was biologically born a male, but I will be referring to Dorian as she. Her father and mother were Franklin Legg and Mary Fox Clark. Mary was expecting prior to her and Franklin tying the knot. Nevertheless, they wed on the 18th of October in 1947. During the 1950s, Dorian was employed at a department store operating as a window dresser. Afterwards, she hit the road to New York City to live there and commenced to study at Parsons School of Design, where she would graduate. Dorian loved graphic design so profusely that, as a customer, she would purchase things and turn whatever she bought into something fabulous. Dorian was underway, touring as a snake dancer in the Pearl Box Revue. That was a drag cabaret act, and she began this in the 1960s. She, along with 3 other drag queens, were on the 1972 Pearl Box Revue LP, Call Me Mister, Misster. Dorian performed consistently as a queen at Sally's Hideaway and at Sally's 2, located on West 43rd Street. Dorian, being such an icon, would perform in these Harlem drag voguing balls, which would also incorporate breakdancers. The drag queens who had been doing this for years and were such mavens at what they did would have these exciting, entertaining pageants with the fresher, greener breakdancers and people that would vogue. It was to show off everyone's sense of humor and how determined that they all were, no matter how young or how old, through these over-the-top performances. Now, Dorian was a dependable, devoted queen. Those assets plus her experience would take her on a journey to mentoring and being a support system for young queens as a mother of her drag family at the House of Corey. Dorian went on the Joan Rivers show in 1991, and she said of the House of Corey, quote, "You lend money to your friends, not very much money, and give advice. Sometimes, if someone gets evicted or whatever, you might take them in," end quote. Dorian was also the house mother to Angie Extravaganza. Later in her life, she was a mother of her own house, and she was also in the 1991 documentary Paris is Burning, which Dorian was the star of and Jenny Livingston directed. It was an award-winning documentary about drag queens and the voguing, breakdancing balls. This documentary brought to life this specific period and place in the LGBTQ history. It made cult figures of some of its outstanding contributors. After Paris is Burning took off, Dorian defined herself as an elder, more knowledgeable and curiously unflustered onlooker of drag life, and very much so, one who partook heavily in it. She said, quote, "I didn't do it for the money. I did it for fun. Always have. You see, I was in show business for years, so when my 15 minutes finally came, it was gravy." End quote. Dorian had a clothing line in which she designed the clothes herself, and it was called Corey Design. One of her performances, she wore a 30 by 40 feathered cape. She stripped the cape off, and all she had on was a body stocking, and it was all sequined, and two people boosted the cape in the air on poles right above the audience to make a fabulous feathery tent for them to be underneath. On the 29th of August, 1993, Dorian lost her life to difficulties that were related to AIDS, and she passed away at the Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center, located in Manhattan. She was only 56 years old. After she perished, what was revealed from the inside of her apartment in Harlem was not what anyone anticipated. 2 months after Dorian had passed away, Lois Taylor decided to go into Dorian's apartment with 2 men. They were in quest of costumes for Halloween. Lois took care of Dorian in the last days leading up to her death, and she was also a drag queen in New York. She was hoping to find these young men some garments from Dorian's closet to sell them. They were burrowing through all of these feathers, fabrics, and sequins before they went to check out the big closet. Lois spotted a trunk, and inside of it was a green plaid bag, a kind of bag that you would store clothes in, and it was folded on the ground. All 3 of them set their eyes on it and wondered what could be inside. Lois stated to New York Magazine in 1993, quote, "I only weigh 135 pounds. I couldn't lift that thing," end quote. So she looked for the zipper to the bag persistently, and to no avail, she gave a pair of scissors to one of the guys so he could cut it open. However, a really horrible odor occupied their noses, so they decided as an alternative they'd stop trying to get into the bag and that they'd just call the authorities instead. Detectives arrived and started to make their way into the bag. having to cut through many layers of the fabric and wrappings that were taped together of a faux leather and a plastic mix. And then they saw something horrifying. There was a body that had become mummified to a degree, laying in the fetal position. This person used to have brown skin, but at this point, their skin was purple and yellow. Their ears were just vanishing cartilage structures. This person had on blue and white boxers that were ripped and tattered. Also, this person had been shot in the head, wrapped in these layers of fabric and the faux leather and plastic. Detective Raul Figueroa found pull tabs that came off of flip-top beer cans. These kind of beer cans were extremely popular in the United States from the 1960s to the 1970s. There were a lot of technicality issues because of the body breaking down from halfway mummifying. However, Detective Raul was surprisingly able to pull fingerprints from the corpse. Finally, there was an identity to put to this person who was fatally shot in the head. His name was Robert Bobby Worley. Robert Worley was born on the 18th of December in 1938. So, what all do we know about Robert? Well, many people claim that he was not close to his family and mostly hadn't been in contact with them since the mid to late 1960s. Also, Robert had been apprehended for the rape and assault of a female during the year of 1963, for which he was given a sentence of 3 years in prison. The detectives that were trying to put the puzzle pieces together determined that at the time, in 1993, Robert was perhaps shot 20 years before he was discovered. Because of Dorian's background, there wasn't anything that pointed to her having to use violence on anyone. I had touched on the film Paris is Burning earlier, and that film holds the most on-camera footage of Dorian. There were interviews where she was so sassy and real and so relaxed, and the way she was as a person never came off to anyone as someone who was violent or mean-spirited. There were those people who wanted to be models and acted like they were so much better than everyone else around them, but not Dorian. She was so self-aware, and she connected with people, and she knew what was going on in the world, not just selfish and only knowing what was going on in her particular world. She seemed so relatable, which made her more lovable to mainstream audiences. In the clip I played earlier from Paris is Burning, Dorian says, quote, "Everybody wants to make an impression, some mark upon the world. Then you think, you've made a mark on the world if you just get through it, and a few people remember your name. If you shoot an arrow and it goes real high, hooray for you." End quote. All throughout the documentary, she never exposed a lot about her personal relationships and never a word about Robert Worley. Observing all of this, there are still so many unanswered inquiries that only Dorian would know the responses to. For example, why did she do it? What happened? What was their relationship, or did she even know this man at all? Was this in self-defense? How and why was Robert's body not discarded somewhere or disposed of in any way? Why would you leave the corpse in your possession inside of your closet? There isn't a lot of physical evidence, and the queens that knew Dorian extremely well either have passed away due to disease or violence. However, there are so many theories about what might have happened, and these theories have been circulating for years. So you have those who ponder that Dorian may have went so far as to try to protect the person that truly murdered Robert, which is why in this theory it is a possible cause of why she may have agreed to conceal the body of Robert in her closet. There's an alternative theory that numerous individuals tend to believe is what actually happened. In this theory, Robert broke into Dorian's apartment, was attempting to rob the residence, perchance even trying to harm Dorian, which presented her no choice other than to defend herself. The crime and violence rates were elevated in Harlem, and Jenny Livingston, the woman who I cited earlier that directed Paris is Burning, she recollected numerous fights happening right outside of Dorian's apartment while they were inside conducting interviews for Paris is Burning. Allegedly, Dorian did own a handgun to defend herself if she ever would need to. Jessie Torres, a friend of Dorian's, said that she did have a little .22, and that was in an interview not long after the news started to circulate about Robert's body being found in Dorian's closet. This tidbit is only alleged, but it is said that Dorian had a note with Robert's body which purportedly said, quote, "This poor man broke into my home and was trying to rob me," end quote. To combine this with the theory that Robert probably did break in and try to harm Dorian, there is a probable reason why she kept the body instead of calling 911 after she defended herself. Not only was she a drag queen, but she was a black drag queen who was living in a bad part of town in the 60s or 70s. It would have been so hard for Dorian to acquire any sympathy from police or for them to even trust her story. I don't like to be biased about any of the cases that I talk about or throw my opinions out there because I recognize people are interested in the facts, but I do tend to believe that theory since she had no history of violent behavior, anything that would point to her just murdering someone for absolutely no reason other than self-defense. So I do consider that something possibly happened where she had to protect herself, and that was the outcome. In my humble opinion, I can't see it being out of hate, evilness, or any mental instability. There is a minute piece of the puzzle that may actually have the potential to shed a little light, but again, we can only speculate at this point. But this material is good to know. It's a likelihood that Dorian and Robert may have been tangled up romantically, and perhaps Robert was an abuser. Lois Taylor, the one who went into Dorian's apartment for the costumes and called 911 and everything, she said that Dorian had written a brief story in the third person, which seemed to some extent be autobiographical. Whether all of it was, or she was just taking a few pieces of her own life and put it in this story, no one knows for a fact. Nevertheless, the story that she wrote was detailing the life of a transgender female who murdered her lover because he was trying to intimidate her with verbal abuse to try to force her to get sex reassignment surgery. The reasons why it seemed at least loosely based on her own life was because she did have breast augmentation, and others believed that she was in fact taking female hormones. And not only those things, but she references the Pearl Box Review as well. To push that this theory of her knowing Robert, possibly even being romantically involved, and that maybe everything Dorian wrote was about her own life, Jessie Torres claims that when Dorian was spending her last days in the hospital, in the midst of being given a good bit of morphine and AZT, Dorian confessed everything to her and their mutual friend Sally. Today's episode is sponsored by Fix. Fix is an adult toy online store whose purpose is to share the most innovative and enjoyable adult toys. Whether for solo play or for mutual enjoyment, Fix has a variety of items to meet all needs. From vibrators to wands to clitoral stimulators, there are tons of items for you to explore. Sex is great, but sex is different for all people, which is why Fix does their best to have a match for everyone. So, what makes Fix products so great? They find people of all walks of life and sexual health experts to do extensive testing and reviews. If it's not a winner, they toss it. If their people love it, it's a definite go. Fix sources products that are sexy, sleek, but most importantly, safe for our bodies. Visit www.letsfix.com, that's LETSPHIX.com, and use the code REVERIE to get a free gift with your order. That's REVERIE to get a free gift with your order. Shop letsfix.com today. Los Angeles playwright Richard Melman wrote the book and lyrics for the play Dorian's Closet. He explained that there was a police interview with Robert Worley's brother Fred Worley. Richard said of this interview, quote, "Robert showed up at his brother's house one night drunk, and he was going on and on about Dorian. There was that sort of corroboration that he was in a relationship and did know Dorian." End quote. So, if they did in fact have some kind of relationship, it was not a great one. There was a play by Reg Flowers, and it was a one-man play called Out of the Bag, and it is essentially trying to get into the mind of Robert Worley. And this play was basically about Robert's alleged struggles with others trying to force him to be more manly, and people telling him to act like he was straight when he was interacting with Dorian, even though he was into her and possibly even had feelings for her. But when he was with her, he would take his anger out on her because of how other people were making him feel. Reg Flowers said, quote, "Being in a relationship with someone who was abusive would make sense, especially when you're talking about when men are attracted to trans people. My sense is that we're talking about someone who might be closeted about their homosexuality as well. And so there might have been all kinds of internalized hatred and internalized oppression. My sense of it is that it was a dangerous situation that Dorian needed to get out of." End quote. Richard Melman thinks that Dorian was petrified of getting rid of Robert's body, and it would be too noticeable in Manhattan. So she essentially, allegedly, covered the body with baking soda and enveloped him securely to diffuse the odor that was definitely going to be unavoidable. So many years of chemical reactions was more than likely why the mummification job was so poorly executed. Robert stated, quote, "I don't think she had a criminal mind. She didn't plan the murder, and when it happened, she had to think fast. In the mind of someone who commits a crime of passion, that kind of makes sense." End quote. Even so, by what means did Dorian not ever get caught for this? According to atlasobscura.com, it says there could at least be 3 factors that could explain this. Dorian was always cool, calm, and collected, and Robert had no communication going on with his family and barely any documentation about his life, and by Dorian being able to tone down the scent of his body in her closet. Atlas Obscura also brings up a valid point as well. An additional factor in Dorian getting away with murder is the fact that she was a piece of such a marginalized world because of her being trans and black. It caused people to insensitively not care too much about her or what she was doing unless it was a tabloid headline or a performance. It is the way that people choose not to recognize 2 penniless, sexually multifaceted black people who were going through such chaos and confusion in the 1960s and 70s in America, which still, unfortunately, holds true to this day. Even so, however these 2 met, and whatever way these 2 people got involved with each other, plus whatever transpired the day that Robert's life was taken, Dorian Corey has made a mark, and that is undeniable. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. I think I will have another bonus episode this week. that you guys can look forward to. And I hope you all have a great day wherever you are. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.